Okay. Yeah, because I always like, because my background in study has been both Eastern and Western. I kind of came in probably initially Egyptian. I'm kind of Egyptian Book of the Dead was an early fascination, but then I got into the Tibetan and got deeply into that. And you read a bit Upanishads and Chan and Zen and all that Western occultism. Read Crowley and Fortune and McGregor Mathers, and I don't even know why. I mean, I read a lot of science fiction as well. I was reading everything. It was all stimulation. I didn't really understand where I was going with it. But I always liked the East and the West. And then I found sort of the Goethean process. Trevor turned me on to, Steiner's scientific work and Goethe. And I started seeing the relationships. I was glad I had studied all those earlier things because they put me on a certain path, what we can call the path of light, right? Light and color, seeing with the eye of the spirit. So we're made of light, right? That's a paper. These are titles of scientific papers. We're made of light, scientific evidence. Biophoton emission, DNA as source, right? Biophotons are fascinating. DNA is a fractal antenna in electromagnetic fields. Your body literally glows with light. Being the biophotons, optical communication channels in our brain with biophotons. These are scientific. I've got links for all of these papers. This is something we may post in the Ether Force list for all these papers I'm referencing here. I'll put them on my Substack as well. I'll do update with all of that. Try and keep up on that. I haven't posted too many articles lately because I've been wrapped up in putting this together. But anyway, the light that powers you is the same light that powers the sun and stars, the lightning and the lightning bugs, and the cosmos in its entirety. We are electroalchemical beings bathed in an electrically connected reality. Right. Erroneous beliefs of the discursive paradigm, right? There's an invisible world out there. Visible world is limited to what we can see and hear. What a limit, right? So it says we can only see a small portion of the electromagnetic spectrum while our ears can only detect sound waves. This leaves a vast range of frequencies beyond our sensory perception, implying there's much more happening around us than we realized. Yeah, in a sense, that's true. But when we think of this from the Goethean sense, we realize that this actually blinds people to what you can see and blinds you to what you can hear, because people don't know how to use those properly to see the higher realms. We're gifted with the visual realm and the auditory realm. These are profound expressions of spiritual manifestation. Not that, there's so much there. All we know is this little bit, right? A few frequencies that we're trapped in. Anyway, I always have a bit of fun with that. Frequency, what frequency, right? Neither tone, nor warmth, nor light, nor electricity are vibrations, any more than a horse is a sum of its gallop paces. So people say, frequency, I go, frequency of what? Just vibration of a wave of this or that, right? You can have a violin or a guitar playing the same note and they'll show up as the same frequency on a frequency meter, right? But it sounds different to your ear, right? There's much, much more to frequency than its number. And we're going to get into the eye a bit here. So cerebral alternation. So stare at this picture here while I talk, right? Our brains function in a rhythmic way. We see a cube in 3 dimensions. So focus on the center of the cube without moving your eyes. Observe the perspective during a few minutes without effort of will. You'll see 2 alternating perspectives, right? Kind of switches back and forth which way the box is. So actually it alternates. You can count the number of seconds each perspective lasts. And anybody can find these diagrams are readily available anywhere. So you can get these and do the exercises yourself. We don't have to spend a lot of time on each slide here with us. I'm giving the idea. But basically, count the seconds. What we find is there's an alternation between the perspectives. When you stare at this, count it, is it equal? And I get about 8 seconds in between the perspective shifting back and forth. It means that the hemispheres are balanced, right? Your attention's adequate. So if they're not, you have problems keeping your attention focused on a task and you get tired quickly. So cerebral alternations are much more regular in the morning after a good night's sleep than in the evening after a hard day's work, naturally. And that comes from what's called phosphenism. Go look it up, phosphenism.com. It's a fascinating study. And here's another one, cerebral alternation, vertical alternation. So the flight of stairs has a peculiar characteristic. It can be perceived as being upside down. Symmetry shows that the brain analyzes shapes beyond what we believe we see. All these phenomena show that the two hemispheres of the brain function in a rhythmic fashion. Attention, memory, and reflection depend on the regularity of brain alternation. Lefebvre, he's the founder of phosphenism. He said, everything that facilitates cerebral alternation improves intellectual work. Everything that improves intellectual work facilitates cerebral alternation. So in the Goethean process, when we're studying, observing nature, we want to be in the most balanced state possible. So pinhole cameras, how light and a candle and a pinhole form an image. So basically, this is standard. I think everybody's familiar with this concept. And some say this is how our sight works. We'll get into that a bit. So yeah, there's some truth to it. We can see, okay, yeah, rays of light coming through. Kind of makes sense. And we see images like this, and camera obscura, and what was that guy's name, Hackney or something, that claimed that the medieval artists, but during the Renaissance, they were using the camera obscura. That's why their stuff was so perfect, right? That they were, using a pinhole camera type thing to paint, and that's why it came through. There's something real interesting about pinhole camera, and I'm going to thank Hunter for this. We've been having these discussions. If you look through a pinhole, this is what your eyes see, but this is what a pinhole camera sees. This is interesting. So basically, a pinhole camera is operating as though there's a glass sphere there. Not like this. Not like this. This is happening, but there's more happening than that. What's causing this? We're not just looking through, there's a lensing effect of a sphere, because, and this was Juan who didn't come on, but my bioarchitecture partner and research associate, Juan Schlosser, he did these with his father. This is pinhole camera. They made bowls and covered the inside of the bowl with photographic material. And they got the pinhole images down to 90 degrees from the pinhole on the card. There's no way a ray or a photon could do that. Absolutely no way. Rays don't take 90-degree angles, and photons don't do 90-degree turns. So just to give a little better idea, so here's more of them. So basically, it is operating. So each point is operating as though there is a sphere in space. And this, so what in the world? I mean, because if we look through it with our eyes, we don't see it, but somehow the imagery is coming through. So there's a lot to consider here, right? Because Ernst Lehrs talked about that, about how, like, the pinhole camera shows that the light, from perspective of the light ether, the image of everything is available at every minute point around us. So in standard electromagnetic spectrum, right? Everything's lined up by numbers, vibration numbers, what's missing, qualities of life and consciousness. But this is a standard picture. We've all seen it, learned it in school. And this is what we would see according to the standard theory. This is what we should see if the color was just being split from light, but this is what we actually see in the prism coming off of a prism at a distance, not right away. And this is from Encyclopedia Britannica. And all the university books have this in. Basically, is light comes through a hole, goes in here, and somehow magically splits into the 7 colors and comes out. It's got to be true. It's in the encyclopedia. It's in the university textbooks. Color experts will argue till they're blue in the face that this is what's happening. But if we basically look at light through a prism, what do we see? What does Goethe say? What is the hardest thing to see? That which is before thy very eyes. And fundamentally, what comes off the prism? We get the blue-violet and the red-yellow. And I want to point them out here because we'll see it all through. So-called violet, that's not purple, is it? It's violet. What is violet? Violet's not purple. What we call blue, so like the RG blue of the standard sort of theory is actually RGV, but there is no, they're not here, so it's obviously not a primary, spectral primary. The green appears further away where the two come together. So the green never comes directly out of a prism. According to Snell's law of refraction and all the interpretations, it is coming out, but it's folded up inside the rays, and you need to do the math to get it out here. And they worked out math that fits, just like they worked out math to invent the Plancks and things like that. As we discussed in the first part with Galileo, right? The mathematical reality is everything, right? Mathematics is the language of nature. So if you can interpret it with math, it's going to be true. But, you know, a lot of qualities that cannot be mathematically interpreted, the secondary qualities of our experience. So here's a breakdown. This is from Goethe's Farbenlehre, his theory of color. And this is basically how color is manufactured in a prism. It's not a component of light at all. So basically, on the left here, we have the Newtonian, right? Light comes through a slit, and here we see the blue-violet and the yellow-red, and green comes off. So right here, where it gets its most balance, this is what Newton took this small section where he saw the most balanced colors and took this to be the primary phenomenon, ignoring the true primary phenomena. So Goethe demonstrated simple prismatic experiments, right? Goethe took into account all aspects seen here in these two diagrams, as well as further experiments, subjective, to confirm his theory. So he did. It's not like he didn't know what Newton was doing. He reproduced all of Newton's experiments to understand where Newton went wrong, right? But the glamour of Newton's experiments clouded the minds of scientists, and they worked out a mathematical analyses that supported their wavelengths theory. So what do we get these days? Newton's nonsense. There's no reality to this at all, but it's what everybody believes. We can't blame Pink Floyd. They were musicians. So looking through a prism, basically we get cards, and these easy to find cards, and anybody can ask me and I'll send you PDFs of cards you can print out. And you get a prism and you look through. So here's the top card. If we look through a prism on the right, what do we see? We see the red, yellow, and the blue, violet. And where they come together, they make green. But up here, there's no. This is what Goethe, right? He wanted to study color. And he looked through a prism at a white wall thinking he was going to see the rainbow, right? And he saw a white wall with, he's going, right? Being the observational genius he was, he knew right away that the Newtonian was incorrect, right? So anyway, so if we look through this way, right, the reverse, the red and the violet come together and make magenta, and this gives us our complete color formation. But basically, this is through a prism. Goethe wanted, what's the primary? And the primary is basically the sun in the sky. So basically, what's the sun, right? So light through turbidity, which is the atmosphere, causes yellow. As it gets thicker, goes to red, as we can see with the sun setting, right? But darkness, so basically the sun's shining through the turbidity of the atmosphere, which gives us the coloration of it. But then it's also illuminating the atmosphere, so the darkness of space, blackness of space is shining through it, which gives us our blue. So in essence, that's what Goethe said at some point, that yeah, yellow is perhaps the only true color, but it needs its complement of blue to come through, and everything else is like derivatives of it through its mixing. And the pure natural format, this is an archetypal structure that we see. So, and this, of course, this is what we're looking for, archetype. We're not looking for pigmented, basically, explanations. So here's basically just from a documentary where they show, here's a water prism that they can use to move up and down. And what we'll see here over the course of about a minute and a half is the two spectra. So here's the basic spectrum being presented until we don't see anything. So if we do it through a slit, and when we get up through the middle, as it gets up, it spreads, sure, we get green, the standard. So we can reverse that, and let's look at both of them. And here we see, so if color is contained in light, then color has to be contained in darkness as well, right? Or it's formed from darkness and light coming together. So here we have the light triangle and the dark triangle, which gives us our full Goethean color circle. So Goethean research into color and light itself points to a domain in the non-physical, to the world of the archetype, ranged above the processes of perception. Here, thinking alone as active spiritual eye can form the bridge. So this is my version of the Goethean color circle, also derived from Dinshaw Ghadiali's work, which we shall be getting into shortly. Goethe, as to what I have done as a poet, I take no pride in it, but that in my century, I am the only person who knows the truth in the difficult science of colors. Of that, I say, I am not a little proud, and here I have a consciousness of a superiority to many. Because he knew what was there, and he knew what he was dealing with. And of course, he had a lot of opposition from the other scientists of his time. And we can see that the Newtonian theory worked out because of the mathematical analysis aspect. So let's compare Goethe and Newton. So the point of departure for Goethe, color comes from the eye, begins with this organ of sight, the eye, the subjective spectrum. Newton, sunlight, begins with the investigation of light, the objective spectrum. So where's the place of humanity in this, right? Humans as nature, humans as observer, and nature as observed are irreducible wholeness. But the Newtonian, man observes nature. One must separate the observer from the observed, right? Don't let your subjective stuff interfere with the experiment. Unless it's the quantum misconceptions, but we'll leave that out for now, for later discussion. Explanation, polarity. Color is the deed as arising from the deeds and sufferings of light with darkness. And to Newton, many in one. All colors are contained in white field and arise due to their particular refrangibility. So the theory of color, archetypal phenomenon. The phenomena of nature lead man to that phenomenon from which all others may be explained, as light through darkness equals reds, darkness through light equals blues. Newtonian, the model. The phenomena of nature lead man to the laws of nature, models, mathematical or physical, such as wave and particle theories, which we know that the wave and the particle can't work, from like what the picture Juan did with his father of the pinhole cameras. It gave a full 90-degree, 180-degree image. So the faculty of the mind, intuition, knowledge through perception, in Newtonian, the discursive knowledge through abstraction. Well, you can pick the path you want to go. Well, I like to go the optics of the doer. The optics of the doer describes a way of seeing the world that goes beyond mere observation and analysis. It involves actively engaging with the world and experiencing it in a holistic and intuitive way. The optics of the doer is based on the idea that reality is not just physical, but also includes non-physical dimensions, such as intuition and spiritual experience. To practice the optics of the doer, cultivate your ability to sense and experience the world in a more holistic, participating way. This involves developing an inner awareness of one's own experience and intuition, as well as a sensitivity to the subtle aspects of the world around us. By practicing the optics of the doer, individuals can move beyond the detached state of spectator consciousness and become more fully engaged with the world around them. So, right, the Goethean process involves us as beings in the world. Meanwhile, back in the discursive realm, more erroneous beliefs of the discursive paradigm, colors don't really exist, right? There are no colors. Apples and fire trucks are not red. The sky and the sea are not blue, and there is no objective black or white. The universe has light in different wavelengths, and color vision depends on how your brain perceives light of different wavelengths. Technically, colors are an illusion created by our brain, or they're the expression of higher beings manifesting through giving us opportunity for soul growth. Take your pick, or come up with another one. I'm open for discussion. Now we're going to talk about our mysterious visual ray, right? Is color inside, outside, optics of the doer? How do we do this, right? There's more to this. So we have a visual ray, kind of this inner light that emanates from the eye and illuminates the object of being perceived. And of course, the eye forms in the womb, so it can't really be from some evolutionary thing. And basically, if they're finding out, they actually dream before you're born as well, which means that there's probably some inner light stuff going, whether it's from the anamnesis we discussed earlier or from previous incarnations, heavens knows, but it's all happening. So the visual ray is not a physical beam of light, but rather a spiritual or energetic force that allows us to see. The visual ray interacts with the object being perceived, creating a connection between the seer and the seen. The visual ray is not just a passive receiver of sensory information, but an active participant in the act of perception. We can train the visual ray to allow us to both see much farther. Trevor Constable, right, who I mentioned earlier, ship's radio officer, some of you are familiar with his work. He was able to see ships over the horizon before radars could pick them up. And he was the one who turned me on to this and got me practicing it years ago in his Cosmic Pulse of Life. By developing use of the visual ray, we deepen our perception of nature as participant and become more conscious of the relationship between the physical and spiritual realms. And there is actually a term, Eigengrau, a German term. That Eigengrau is the dark gray color seen by the eyes in perfect darkness as a result of signals from the optic nerve. So, right, there is the emission theory of vision. This goes back to Empedocles and other ancient philosophers. I have an article on Substack which gets into more detail of this, but the emission theory of vision, we see because a visual ray streams out of our eyes, touching that which we see, like a lighthouse where gaze brings things into view. Objects give off effluences and our eyes give off effluences. It's the interaction of these which causes vision. In modern scientific theory, only the intromission aspect is now accepted. So yeah, basically sight is happening. So yeah, sort of like the some of our eyes, I can't remember, rods and cones, you know. So our eyes, the part coming in lets us see, right? It gives us an awareness of the space, but our visual ray is what we're seeing, right? That's what we focus on and put out, right? So there's actually two aspects of seeing. The intromission and emission are both happening at the same time. And it can be measured. Mysterious rays from human eyes move solenoid. This Popular Science, January 1922. I put this on Substack. Dr. Russ's apparatus consists of a double glass jar containing a solenoid that is free to turn when the vision is directed through the slit. And he's done, there was articles on this. This was in the Standard Press at the time. A new physiological force has been discovered after 3 years of patient research by Dr. Charles M. Russ, who has invented an instrument which shows that there lies in the human eye certain definite power, which is quite distinct from the suppositional influences of will, power, or occultism. Okay, there was an announcement made at a meeting of the Oxford Ophthalmologic Conference. So he was basically, I didn't put it in my notes, but he was basically trying to measure minor voltages of this. So he figured there was a voltage of some sort coming out of the eye, and he was showing that it was there. He was not the only one. The gaze detection effect. Psychiatrist research finds you can really feel a person stare. The electrophysiological basis of evil eye belief by Colin Ross, MD, says from his paper on that. The sense of being stared at is the basis of evil eye beliefs. It's regarded as superstitions because the emission of any form of energy from the human eye has been rejected by Western science. The brain waves in the 1 to 40 hertz, 1 to 10 microvolt range emitted through the eye can be detected using a high impedance electrode housed inside electromagnetically insulated goggles. This signal is physiologically active and has distinct electrophysiological properties from simultaneous brainwave recordings. So there you have it. It can be measured. It is coming out. And you can use it. I was back in the 70s, even before I met Trevor, right? Because I met Trevor and he started telling me about this. I said, man, I had that book on my shelf for like 10 years before I met you. I used to make these and sit in my room and stare at them. And I could move them with my eye. I made sure that everything in the room was sealed so there was no draft. And I would make like two similar devices. And I would, with my visual ray, I would, stare in the middle between the two of them and have them rotating inwards towards each other. I would try to move outward and make them move, but it's true. Your visual ray is there and you can do that. So you can make these psionic generator pattern books. Not hard to find this book. Lie quietly in a darkened room, shut off all distractions. Hold your hand up in front of you, palms facing you. Swing your eyes back and forth across a spot in the dark where your hands are, attempting to feel your own visual ray. Persist and focus all your faculties of touch into the visual ray and send it out into the darkened room to feel all kinds of protuberances. Once you have developed a little sensitivity, the effect is akin to running the teeth of a comb over your fingertips, but immeasurably more subtle. So yeah, paper forms are in John Boyle's Psionic Generator Pattern book. So it's a fun experiment. Just go and do it today. Start thinking about it. To prove the presence, you can dissipate clouds using this simple procedure, which I have done many times. Not so much anymore, but I first found out about it. Well, I mean, I used to think, oh, you can stare at clouds and they go away, but then I realized there was far more to it. So yeah, choose a day when you have numerous small discrete clouds. Of course, barefoot's the best, really. Select one cloud to be dissipated. Resolve inwardly. You're going to dissipate that cloud, drawing the energy down into your visual ray into yourself. It goes both ways. You can draw it in or you can send it out. Concentrate into the cloud, slice your visual ray back and forth across it, then bore into it, then slice back and forth. Within 5 minutes, the cloud will have begun to disperse after clearly having lost cohesion. Surrounding clouds of comparable size to the selected clouds remain essentially unchanged. Although if you move around, you can actually kind of combine up clouds. You not just get rid of them, you can, just like with a cloud buster, you can increase them as well. I did, that was one experiment when I was up with Eric Dollard. This would have been circa, 19, I can't remember, around whenever we did, it must have been 1990-ish. We did the Marconi Wireless building. We went, the video's on YouTube. We went around filming the whole Marconi Wireless building and all the bits. And one of the things was in the ground, there's the big electrodes coming out for the copper plates where they had the big grounds with the big copper plates that went into the San Andreas Fault. So I was sort of crouched down and holding this and staring up at this big puffy cloud. And the cloud just shrunk so fast. And I was like, knocked me out. My brain got cloudy. I could feel like the charge going through me. I had to really push it, because I was connected to this deep ground. I had to like get it all flow through me and out of my ground. It was like this overwhelming experience, but it was amazing how quickly that cloud disappeared when I was connected to that deep ground. So here, just stare at this dot in the middle for a bit. The picture is going to change. This is an animated GIF. So look at the black dot till the image changes to black and white. Your eyes will trick you into thinking second image is in color. I'll let it play a couple times. And basically, it looks like it's color until you move your eyes and then you realize it's not. It's a black and white image. It may be hard. It works for me on the screen here, and we can find these images. We can post them in the Etherforce public. It's not hard to find these. You just go search for after images, and there's plenty on the internet to play with this. But it definitely works. So there's more. Here's another one. Stare at this dot, and then it's going to go into a countdown of a colored image. Stare intently. It should look like a colored picture to you, but it's not. It's just a black and white line drawing. We'll do it one more time. We're getting these after images, and we're going to discuss it because standard science has what the RGB. It's one of the proofs of the Newtonian is we only have these red, green, and blue receptors, and blue being really the spectral violet. But that doesn't explain the after vision. So there's this opponent process of color vision, and oh yeah. The opponent so basically they've come up with this, and I was discussing this with Hunter because we discourse quite a bit on color theory. He's going, well, those aren't really the right colors, and they kind of, he said, no, check it out. So he actually made these. Thank you, Hunter, for being such a wonderful dialogue partner on these things. So stare at the green for about a minute. And you can, of course, take these. We'll make all of these available. And then look down below. And what you do is you actually get the Goethean opposition. You see, basically, usually they say green and red, but if you get bright green, you actually get magenta. And we haven't gotten to the importance of this yet, but I just want people to play around. So this is something you can play with at home. We'll make these available on the Etherforce in the color in light of the Goethean thread, whichever one there. This is basically what we see in coming off of them. But then look at this slide too. Look at like the green in the middle and stare at this for like a minute. And perhaps being a metaphor. Then you look down and you see the reverse spectrum, right? The Goethean spectrum. So anyway, a lot of experiments they can do with this. So why? What's the importance of this? It's incredibly important. The complete process of vision, according to Ernst Lehrs, right? The retina and choroid work together to create vision, right? So the retina is responsible for receiving the light. So the retina has the rods and cones. So choroid is responsible for supplying the retina with blood and building up forces. So interplay between the retina and choroid creates the inner light that is essential for vision. That when the eye is adapted to darkness, the choroid is at rest and cannot quickly counteract the influence of light. This causes the dazzling effect of light on an eye adapted to the dark. When the eye is adapted to light, the choroid is active and can quickly counteract the influences of darkness. This causes the dark field of vision that appears when one suddenly exposed to darkness, the eye adapted to light, right? The negative after image is caused by a difference in the activity of the blood in the parts of the eye that were exposed to light and those that were not. The positive after image is caused by the activity of the blood reproducing the outer reality, not the rods and cones, but the choroid. The fact that the place where the optic nerve enters the eye is blind indicates that the function of mediating sight cannot be ascribed to the nerve alone. So the visual ray comes out of the blood, right? This is sort of our willing activity, rather than just this passive lights coming in and being interpreted. So what we see as an after vision, and these after images, what we're looking at, this is what, in a subtle form, our eye is actually putting out, allowing color to appear out in the objective world. So the color is real. It is out in the objective world. It's not just some brain in a box, electrons going into your brain that looks that way, secondary qualities. You're experiencing dynamic reality out in space when you're seeing things. And you need to know this, that you have this power, this will within inside yourself. You know, don't be belittled by science, that you're just some observer and all you got to do is rely on authority to tell you how everything's happening. Go out and take charge of your life in the world. Here's one, Kaczynski, biological radio communications, so much of this stuff, trying to stay focused. The eye not only sees, but also simultaneously emits electromagnetic waves of a certain frequency into space. These waves are capable of affecting a person at a distance. They can influence behavior, induce certain thoughts and actions. So here, according to him, the rods of the retina were considered to be sources of radiation and the cones were the receivers. I like this model. It's interesting, rather than all the rods and cones being receivers and the blood, the choroid being the receptor. So we'll look at all of these. I don't have any decision. I'm still trying to learn this and understand. So this is what I've put together so far in my understanding. So since the peculiar antenna's rods were very small in size, it was assumed that the upper boundary of the waves extends far towards the infrared rays of the spectrum, which may be where the sensation that we get from when people are looking at us from behind. Anyway, it's some far off stuff. Even Tesla, tremendous new power soon to be unleashed. Tesla said, I expect to photograph thoughts. While engaged in certain investigations, I became convinced that a definite image formed in thought must by reflex action produce a corresponding image on the retina, which might be read by a suitable apparatus. If this can be done successfully, then the objects imagined by a person would be clearly reflected on the screen as they are formed, and in this way every thought of the individual could be read. Our minds would then, indeed, be like open books. And funny enough, here's this. I actually picked this up from one of Vida Austin's talks on her Magical Egypt Summit talk, and it's all the research I did, and I hadn't come across this, so it's always great to hear what other researchers are doing and pick this up. But Gennady Krolikev, he was a psychiatrist from Omsk in Russia. So he was conducting research on photographing hallucinatory images in the eye in mental patients. So hallucinations could be a physical phenomenon that could be fixed with special instruments. So he conducted an experiment in 1974 to fix hallucinatory images on film, which resulted in a faint female portrait. So he developed a special device to investigate this with the apparatus we see here. He investigated 250 patients over 22 years, with 117 of them receiving pictures of visual hallucinations. The patients easily identified the images on the film with those that appeared before them in hallucinations. Krokalev believed that visual hallucinations have an external origin and that the sick person has a reduced energy potential, causing them to see something that cannot be seen in the normal state of consciousness. Well, maybe it's that. Are they generated from inside, coming outside? It's an interesting question. And yeah, the pictures I saw of this were more rudimentary of shapes, but there was something there. It was interesting. But seeing beyond site. Then we have Baron Reichenbach's work, right? Reichenbach, eminent scientist in Austria, discovered fine force issuing from all known elements and substances. He termed it odile, or the odic force. It appears in beautiful lights and colors, which can be both seen and felt by persons who he called sensitives. Excuse me. He tested them in a dark stone rooms, bringing in materials or energies over wires, right? So he built these stone rooms completely isolating. Well, basically, the sensitives were people he discovered through sleepwalking, right? In his book, like Somnambulism and Cramp. He found that there was an epidemic of sleepwalking. He found, studying this in his notes, the sleepwalkers were people that had sensitive people that had the moon shining on their bed at night, or in their room at least. And that sleepwalking generally occurred on or around the full moon, which we just had the full moon early this morning. So it'll be beautifully full. It was last night and will be tonight. But that's when the sensitives react to the moon. It was interesting. So he found these people, started testing them, putting them in stone rooms with metallic wires coming in and putting objects on the other ends outside to see what they could see. So they found that the odic force had the same properties of light, but much finer, appears in all known objects, but especially those under forces of electricity, magnetism, heat, and light. Interesting, the sun produced cold light and the moon produced warm light. How interesting was that? And this is one of the sensitives. This is what they would see coming off a horseshoe magnet. The North Pole having more. This is actually from Babbitt's Principles of Light and Color. He discusses this a bit in there. But it's a wonderful thing to think about. So we'll get into it a bit more, right? And then there was Trevor Constable. He was taking pictures with infrared film. They called the critters the Amoebae constabilia, right? They're named after him, the critters. And he did it both ways. He did it with infrared film, some with the 18A filter, the Rattan 18A, and some without. This is one with the filter. Because some we get the backgrounds. So he did it both ways. But nonetheless, with the 18A filter, it blocked all visible light and just let infrared and UV sort of sides of the spectrum in it. And Trevor would get these. So basically operating in the infrared, these critters. And Trevor would explain it. And basically, here's the Goethe spectrum at the top, right? We have the full circle, right? Red, intermediate colors, yellow. So yellow, blue make green, and violet and red make the peach blossom or magenta out here. So basically, the 18A filter absorbed the visible light and let the invisible in, infrared. But it still picked up, even not using this. I've actually tried this and didn't use. And my good friend Richard Toronto, he basically reproduced a lot of Trevor's photographs, much better than Trevor did in many ways. And here is Trevor. One of the things I wanted to say about Reichenbach and his sensitives, right? He took them out. He would take them out into the countryside to look around and see what they could see. And what was interesting is they would see sort of things hovering over graves. They could see like the etheric emanations of the recently dead and things hovering over graves, and see different images around churches when people are praying, and get all these different sort of things. So anyway, Rich Toronto, he took these pictures. He lost the original films, but we have the this was reproduced in the Cosmic Pulse of Life, the edition I edited. So he basically got the same schools of these things on multiple images, right? Trevor never did. He, even using a stereo camera, the things would only appear on one side. All right, and that was one of the arguments against it. Well, it's just film aberrations, right? But Toronto, he got things to appear on multiple shots. So this is from, he was standing on a hill at Vallejo, just basically doing a 360 circle, he was a professional photographer, doing this with the infrared film. And basically on 3 of the images, but the 2 best ones here, the same flock basically flying. So anyway, I was talking to Rich, and I'm going, yeah, wow, that's pretty amazing. I go, well, I wonder what's over that direction. And he said, a graveyard. So Reichenbach was right. Something to them, these etheric critters. And this is actually some infrared film, that infrared sensitive 8mm Super 8 that Trevor did back in the 70s. And you can actually see things moving around on it. It's not a very good film, and I was only able to derive from, video. But you can still see things moving around, right? He's filming by trees, basically trying to, get things. So anyway, it just keeps repeating, but to show that there's movement in them. Okay. And then here's the NASA UFOs. This is a space shuttle STS-75 tether incident. So this was 12-mile-long tether deployed by satellite from the shuttle on February 25th, 1996. So it produced an overload of electricity, breaking the tether, severing it from the shuttle. 3 days later, February 28th, 96, when the shuttle and its crew were separated from the tether by over 77 nautical miles, it appeared a swarm of UFOs flurried around the tether. Astronaut Claude Nicollier took video footage using a handheld black and white camera designed to see both visible and into the near infrared, invisible to the human eye, of what appeared to be over 50 pulsing giant UFOs. Some of the UFOs can be measured as they pass behind the 12-mile-long tether, using tether as a relative measuring distance at 2 to 3 miles in diameter. That was David Sarita did that measurement. The near-infrared sensors on the camera used on STS-75 were able to image objects that were too faint to be seen in visible light, so allowed the cameras to record the tether incident in detail, even though it was happening in the dark. So what in the world are these things pulsing through space? And they're going behind the tether. Of course, NASA's explanation is, well, it's dust. Oh, it's just dust flying around. Yeah, dust in space, it pulses and has like food vacuoles and stuff. So these are infrared critters in space. So they're on the ground, they're in space. So this is Quentin Fogarty. I read this book, back in the 70s when it came out. Let's hope they're friendly. Kaikoura UFOs, Kaikoura, New Zealand, is my Kiwi mates on here now. He was a news reporter, and there was these UFOs were showing up and being seen off Kaikoura. So he got on an airplane, a cargo plane, and took these images and blew up all the way to the American news. And that's one heck of a story. It's a wonderful book. But he keeps his mouth shut through the whole thing. All he talks about is what he saw and basically what the whole media frenzy and backlash and everything had caused him in his life. But at the end of the book, he says, I never said how I felt in all this. He said, but I wanted to wait until I told my story. But here's how I felt. He said, to me, it was just that they were some sort of intelligence of their own, not having occupants or anything. Whatever they were, that was the entire thing. I didn't have a feeling of anything inside them. It gets a little weird and wacky. I had another feeling at the time, which I have not written about, like they were collecting souls of the dead. I can't explain this feeling. They were far more psychic than anything. I felt that there was something incredibly spiritual and emotional about it all, but I could not come to terms with it. I couldn't work out what it was. Throughout the whole thing, I cannot be convinced about an extraterrestrial organ, because it doesn't feel right for no other reason. So here again, he's saying souls of the dead, or there could be souls in the intermediate state in the bardo. So what are all these things flying around the NASA and the ones photographed over the graveyards? Heavens knows. So anyway, let's get back to, we know that there's are things outside our vision, but we can reach out and try to feel them. So we'll get back to the 6-point star, which is both the Goethean color theory, as well as Dinshaw's color system, which we're going to get into now. And this is biophoton, hexagonal sacred geometry. So it's the observing inside structure of biophotons in drops of water. So a somatoscope, it's a dark field microscope, magnification of 30,000 diameters. So adjusting the focus on a single biophoton we see, center of light. So 6-pointed star that morphs these different stages as basically, cut in. So what we'll do here, I just did it so we can look at them phasing through. So biophotons themselves have this 6-pointed geometry within them. And that will bring us to Dinshaw-Gattielli Spectrochrome system. Humble servant of suffering mankind. And this is an absolutely brilliant system on many ways. I was introduced to it back in the 80s. I knew about people using it, just getting Darius Dinshaw's book, right, and making 12 color gels. And I came from, I've worked with for many years when I was younger, theater lighting for rock and roll bands. So I always kept all kinds of theater gels around and put them on my windows. I always liked having color around. It was natural to me. But then learning of this Dinshaw system of the 12 colors that you could basically create these healing effects with. So I started writing about it in Borderland. What was interesting, out of the blue, I had the Darius's book, Let There Be Light. And then one day in the mail, not long after I took over, it showed up the 3 volumes, Spectrochrometry Encyclopedia by, Dinshaw, the old man. And so anyway, I put something in Borderland. I was reading it and going, so I put something in Borderland about the 2 sons of Dinshaw, Darius and Sarosh, that were basically promoting the work, but following the different systems, a different approach. And Sarosh called me up, all upset. He's going, man, don't ever put me in the same paragraph as my brother. I'm going, why not? He says, because he's not doing what my father taught. He says, you can't make 12 colors out of gels. It's not the right system. And this is interesting. So according to the Dinshaw system, right, it's quite interesting, right? So he had 5 colors: red, yellow, green, blue, and violet. Red, when you think of red as like the liver and, red blood cells and all that. Violet's like the spleen and white blood cells, green, pituitary, ruling the head, magenta, ruling the emotions and the heart. Yellow is like motor stimulant, activates that side, the blue, kind of more the chemical functions of the body, and you get all these different aspects built in. This is our body. It's structured like this, but Dinshaw only used 5 glass slides. This is one of his old instruments here, Spectrochrome. So here's the 5 slides. This is the picture I took years ago on one of my windows in New Zealand. I had them set up there. So basically you have the red, yellow, green, blue, violet. And from these 5 slides, you make 12 colors. So red and yellow make orange, obviously. Yellow and green make lemon. Green and blue make turquoise. Blue and violet make indigo. But you mix violet and yellow, you get purple. You mix red and blue and you get scarlet, and you mix violet and red and you get the magenta. And he said magenta and green are the same wavelength or oscillatory rate, as he put it in his terminology, but they rotate in opposite directions in the ether. So this little set here is this friend of mine, Mark. We were working on a project actually about 10 years ago now, trying to reproduce this with find authentic glass that could do the slides, because plastic gels, the Roscoline and Roscolux theater gels, have different transmission properties, and we could never find a proper matching set that worked with the proper 12 colors. And why did Dinshaw think these 12 colors? Well, we'll find out a bit. Dinshaw said, if you don't use 5 colors, it's a fraud upon the system. And he threw out this guy, Stanley Gibbons, who was the first, I think that was his name. He was the first one to start using the theater gels. He was using 5 theater gels, but Dinshaw said, no, you have to use glass. You have to use the right ones. And this is something Hunter and I have, helping Hunter, because he's been looking at this, looking at different samples, and my friend Mark, we've all tried over the years to rematch these things. This is something we hope to do in the future, is rebuild the original system, because it's more than just the color and the vibration on the body, but I believe it's a spiritual archetype of the Zoroastrian impulse. This is where light and dark come together, on our plane. Light battles darkness to form existence in that sense, but it all originates from the good, is the original thing. And these 5 slides can help teach us that, right? So green, right, head polarity, green, sex polarity, magenta, circulation stimulant, infragreen, ultra green, circulation depressant. So it's a fascinating system I recommend. And I set up the website spectrochrome.com. All this basic information is there. And Dinshaw even worked out where the spectral elements, right? Because there's no single wavelength of, we call Fraunhofer or emission or, emission or absorption lines for the different elements. So he put those around, right? He put like lithium and potassium on the magenta line. So some of it's spectroscopically, some through principles, but he was trying to create a whole picture of this. And when I was doing my experiments, when we worked on this project years ago, we did spectrographic analyses of the slides, which we needed, if we want to reproduce and do things exactly to get the match sets, so we can get the full realm of 12 colors perfectly, which you need. So basically, this is the top slide is basically a red and a green making, a yellow and blue making green coming together. So this gives us, wavelength, around 550 nanometers. And the bottom one is basically the violet and the red coming together. And you get the same effect, but it comes down, right? It comes down about the same point. And what you realize is the spectroscopes are made to only really go one direction, but they can go the other direction if you want them to. So we basically show green and magenta do have the same wavelength, but they rotate in opposite direction to the ether, as Dinshaw said. So what is wavelength, right? Color cannot be wavelength. Color has a wavelength. It has something greater too. You don't want stuff light, the divine origin into the corporeal reality. So I like this analogy, which I've put together from Theodore Schwenk's Sensitive Chaos, where he showed water flowing. So basically you have a channel, which the light blue represents, and you flow water into the channel through a little slit, and it makes this sinuous pattern. And you get these little vortices. But then we remove that which was making the slit and put an object of the exact same size and position where the slit was, and you get the exact same pattern, but the vortices spin in opposite directions. So it could very well be that, if we want to think of light as a wave or as an ether flow, or however we want to think of it, so we may need different analogies for different parts of it. But according to Dinshaw, green and magenta are the same wavelength, but rotate in opposite directions in the ether. Green rules the physical system, magenta rules the spiritual and the heart. Goethe, green is the image of the living, of life, the atomistic dead image of the living. Magenta is the soul life active in the human being, the living image of the soul. So there's more to light and color than just, frequency and what we see and what comes into our brain. And Dinshaw's work was so important that the U.S. Marshals had to chop that equipment up to stop people from shining lights on their bodies. Like, don't let people do that. They might find some freedom. So I've always been looking for a better picture of this. I've tried to enhance it a bit, right, from a newspaper clipping that Dinshaw reproduced in one of his books. But what a shame. They dragged Dinshaw through a number of trials, all of which he won, including rape. They put him in jail for statutory rape, right, because he crossed the state lines with his secretary with the door closed on a train carriage from New York into New Jersey for a meeting. It's like they tried to throw anything they could at him. Who was it? I forget which president pardoned him, right? Because it was so ridiculous. They had to pardon him for that one. But finally, they had this big federal trial in New York. And it was interesting because he's saying, "Oh, we're in Admiralty." And the judge says, "Why did you say that?" He says, "Because you seized my equipment. The charges are against my equipment. This is it." And the judge goes, "Yeah, this is 1947. Dinshaw was way ahead of everybody on everything." But halfway through the trial, which he was apparently winning, if you read the book 1,000 Years Ahead, which is a transcript, at least of part of it, and basically his lab got firebombed. It was such ferocity that it melted all his equipment to the ground. All it was left was dust, ashes, and melted metals. And they forbid him to use the term spectrochrome. So he started the visible spectrum instrument and kept going on. But anyway, this is what happens when you try to pioneer something. So this is again from Dinshaw here. We got attuned color waves through sympathetic chain. So, right, these are like our nerves, our central, right, left or central spiritual ganglia, Ida and Pingala, and the Sushumna. So basically, we're not going to get too deep into this, but I just want to say kind of like how the red is a thermal wave, yellow luminous wave, blue refrigerant wave, and violet, the radioactive wave, right? Governing wave, green, emotional. So we're just going to look at this just as a general concept and move on to the next one. We'll revisit this in a second. And this is from Günter Wachsmuth's Etheric Formative Forces in Cosmos, Earth, and Man. And here he's trying to put this together. So he has here's like the Goethean spectrum, right? Here's red, yellow, blue, violet. And here, right, you get green, but he sort of puts it in the middle as a center, right, to plant. Because he's trying to tie it in with the ethers. And right down here, we have where the red and violet come together, the peach blossom. So he's saying, right, like the ethers, right? So the warmth ethers kind of like off the side of the red. The violet ethers off the side of the violet. So this is like off in the infrared. This is in the ultraviolet. The light ethers in the light pole, the chemical ethers over here, like on Dinshaw's, right? So the ethers, so the light carries more than just the light frequency or a wave or something, but actual vitality, the vital substances. So we put these kind of together, the two of them. So, right, yellow luminous wave, right, is light ether, right? Red thermal wave, warmth ether, blue refrigerant wave, chemical ether, and violet radioactive wave, life ether. So try to meditate on these things, try to come up with an archetypal structure of light beyond it's just mere prismatic expression. So you have to start thinking in these, like the archetypal plant. Well, what's the archetypal form of color formation, which extends into the warmth ether, the light ether, tone ether, that the light carries vitality with it. And this brings us then into Rudolf Hauschka's vitamin ether experiments, right? Because vitamins, interesting, right? The A, B, C, and D, the names actually come from an avitaminosis from the diseases, right? Back when people started, like Voller synthesized urea, and people started making organic compounds, using, coal tar chemistry and things, and figuring out that, well, you could make, what's life? Life's mechanical. Look, now we can make the molecules. But there was experiments with or synthesized milk. They were giving it to cows or calves, right? And the calves with the synthetic milk were getting all these different problems, which they named as like A, B, C, and D. Right, A, stunted growth, B is like beriberi type effects, C, scurvy, D, rickets. So what Hauschka was doing is he was basically isolating out different parts of the spectrum and growing yeast in sealed containers. Basically, a double-walled glass containers, and grow the yeast on the inside. And he would seal off, different parts of the spectrum using these different substances. So, through, warmth, light, and chemical action, right? Which UV chemical. So through alum solution, right, he was able to get out the infrared. Through iodine, right, the light thief, the visible. Esculin is like a chestnut sort of solution that basically filters out ultraviolet. Then he would grow them, and basically what he found is he would get this stunted, so get out warmth, right? Part of our warmth being gone, right? We don't get the oils and seeds and stuff, stunted growth. Basically, scorbutic yeast, iodine sphere. Because part of it is they couldn't find out, like for vitamin C, people were coming up with different molecules for vitamin C. Which one's the actual vitamin? Different things work. So it's more the molecular structure helps carry it. And some are going to be more vital than others. We know about shape energy. So basically light, green plants, scurvy. That was this one here, right there. Not exactly in order, the berry. So this is A, B, C. But form, how do you get form, right? Because he couldn't do it at part of the spectrum. He just had the three ranges of the spectrum. So what he did is he took a vacuum. He put a vacuum in where he was putting the solutions. And with the vacuum, right, the yeast basically formed, what they called, the rickets formation. And that's because the vacuum basically sealed out, what was happening in our environment as he saw it. So it's a brilliant series of experiments. Rudolf Hauschka, he found a wall of pharmaceuticals, and you've probably seen in health food stores and stuff, the Hauschka cosmetics, because he developed a way of preserving plant qualities, herbal qualities, and the lotions and things. So anyway, in the nature of substance, I would highly recommend it. So this is from Gunter Vaxman's Etheric Formative Forces, right? Just the four ethers as kind of, they appear in archetypal form to our higher vision on this realm. So the warmth ether, the warmth and light, they're radial, expansive, centrifugal, moving outward. So warmth, impulse creating, binding biological force, light, it makes things visible, right? And it's upright force that draws plants upwards and weaves them into space, the light ether. The anastomosis of leaves comes from this. The tone and chemical ether, right? Harmonizes structural development of phenomena. So I just want to sort of I work these forms out like this. Suctional, contractive, centripetal, right? And life unifies object. So we can do things if we think of a fire. Just imagine you're like sitting around a campfire and you see like the coals, they're red and the flames, they're pointed up, right? So you have the warmth ether and the light ether like coming out of, so the warmth being biological. So the warmth ether and the fire element are basically a Janus-headed thing to connect the elements in the ether. So basically biological. So you have strike a match, right? And the wood starts burning. So what happens when it burns is the elemental part falls down, the carbon falls to earth, and the ether moves upward towards the thermosphere, which is why, like I showed in the first part, where on the space shuttle or in space, when you're in microgravity, a flame no longer points up. It creates a sphere because in the thermosphere is the point of levity for that. And we can look at then, this is from Loom of Creation, Milner and Stewart's works, trying to explain how these operate. So this is idealized state of the earth. So color key, red, warmth ether, dominates outer atmosphere, yellow, light ether, inner atmosphere, that we're basically in, blues, chemical ether, oceanic periphery, and brown, negative light ether, life ether. And the reason they talk about that in the book is that there has to be some negative spiritual aspects to this, these negative spiritual beings, which help solidify form, which is kind of the death polarity, we could say, in our bones. Without that, we would have no solid form, right? And that's why the life ether, as it comes in and works in, it starts creating the formative basis. Anyway, and then the green over here is where the force interaction with life processes are enacted. So this is the idealized state, right? So all the ethers interpenetrate each other, and they're all present at some degree, but this is the idealized state. But then in the morning, right, when under the action of the sun, the chemical ether is drawn up from the earth, and the warmth and light ethers penetrate down in the atmosphere and give us the green zone, right? This is, the balanced part that we live in. So this arises the breathing of the etheric forces, which I was going to do more slides on this, but this stuff could go on for hours. And what we'll do over time is I'll break these sections down into smaller, perhaps 1 hour things, and do more videos. And John, who's on here, John understands this very well. And we interact through the Ether Force group. So there's going to be a lot more of this material coming out, and hopefully everybody on here is going to be contributing and learning, right? This is just my point of understanding. As I say, I'm not saying I'm right or wrong. I'm just good at arguing my points and expressing what I've understood so far, my rhetorical level. So this is how and this diagram I pretty much came out of the Four Ethers by Ernst Marty. It's kind of the way he explained it. I sort of mapped that out. So, life, ether, and earth, they're related. So life is inner mobility and posture, where earth is rigid, positioned. So this is 3 dimensions we can think of. Tone, water, they're 2-dimensional, not really, but it's a way of thinking of it. So tone's discrete, like a tree, right? Branches out, cellular division, intervals. Water, it's continuous, like a river, fertilizes, it's dense. So similarities and differences, but they're relational fields. So light on things separates, releases rays out, where air is in between things, connects, tension, cohesion, the sucking, pressing. So warmth ether. So warmth ether is birth, fires are dying away, right? So we have intensive motion. So anyway, this is one way of thinking of the ethers and elements. And these elements these are the tattvas from the Hindu, Prithvi, Apas, Vayu, Tejas. And then this is what they call a tattva vision, where you can meditate on these, and it actually triggers in consciousness, kind of like an archetypal vision, or like the reverse vision we were talking about. And this opens up in your consciousness comprehensions or intuitions of these elemental realms. And even Dinshaw said that, that to progress, right, you need to, before you can understand any of this, you need the initiation of the 4 elements. Well, what's the initiation of the 4 elements? Well, I think everybody on this talk is going to already have them. One of my pet peeves, the rainbow chakras, right? Goethe said, an error in thinking will lead centuries astray. And it has, when you think of the rainbow chakras. Because they were invented in 1967 by Christopher Hills. They did not exist before that. There's some theosophical literature, people are starting to intimate. Who was it? Marie Louise, she did a book out of New Zealand, which I actually read long ago, where she talks about the organs being the different colors of the rainbow, right? But they're just trying to metaphorically relate things. On the right are the base of the real chakras, which you can see in the traditional system in the center. And this is the initiation of the 4 chakras. As you go through experiences or initiatory processes and connect these up, and when you finally get up to the Anahata chakra and these 4 things are connected, then the higher realm starts working. Then introspection starts and you begin your path towards conscious evolution. So the immortal soul isn't born. It grows out of the elemental fields in this model. And Steiner said something about how one of the tasks of our civilization is to release the elementals right through our activity. And think of all the mining on the earth right now, digging up minerals and oils and all of this, along with the electric forces and disrupting everything. And look at the masses of humanity with no direction, right? Creatures of impulse, because they've been born in human form, and these energy centers come out of the elemental seas, which we've always drawn from, but now there's these masses of them coming out. So these are people that haven't had the experience principles of them joining together yet, and they will over the next precessional cycle. That's when their opportunity, right? So maybe if they're only somehow through some experiences or stages of awakening, a few of these centers. So when they reincarnate, only these centers will come in and maybe draw in the other ones if there was some attraction. But it takes a while for the incarnate soul to pull together and be able to do all this. And so basically, yeah, then once you become active and activate your inner vision, and I've often wondered, does the visual ray, is it activated by the Ajna chakra? Is that what this is, to allow us to start developing our higher sense? So I always try to relate these to the Goethean process. But one of the things is, and I do with Anahata, you see how the Anahata chakra, Vayu has a 6-pointed star within it in the traditional tattvas. So in essence, in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, they're always talking about when you're going through the Bardo realm, and if you meet the wisdom and you haven't caught on to what's happening because you didn't have enough learning and teaching this insight, it says, take refuge in the rainbow heart of the Buddha. So what's you go search on Google, what's rainbow heart of the Buddha? I want to learn about that, right? And they just have all these pictures of Buddha with a rainbow in the heart. But if you think about it, what are they really talking about? It's a metaphorical language trying to express a definite spiritual reality. And fundamentally, this is the mandala, the red, yellow, blue, violet, creates the mandala and the unfolding on our plane. So the archetypal heart, rainbow heart of the Buddha, is the Goethean or the Dinsha color wheel. The archetypal Anahata chakra, which is the love of creation, bringing it all forth. And we can look at that in the Tibetan, right? We have the peaceful deities on the left and the wrathful deities, which you meet in the, after you go through the wisdoms, which are the sectors of the mandala, where you take refuge in the rainbow heart. If you don't, then you're thrown into this section where, the peaceful deities, and what they are, they're associated with the Anahata chakra. So those are your experiences, memorable experiences with people through the heart, right? Family, friends, all the good experiences in that sense that you've had. The natural purity of the fundamental components of beings, right? Psychophysical aggregates, elemental properties, sensory, mental processes, all tied in with your perception of things. But the wrathful deities are the Sahasrara chakra, which the Tibetans call the wheel of sharp weapons. So it's the highest level of spiritual awareness, but they represent harmful karma a person created in their lifetime. So it can purify awareness with false thinking, ignorance. So they're not really wrathful. They're the most peaceful. They just appear wrathful if your mind's not clear. So in order to progress through, but the point of this, and the reason I showed them here, is they are basically the mandala. Here's the center of the mandala, and 1, 2, 3, the 4 outer Here's the center of the mandala, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the same as everyone. And the color circle basically is, I was meant to explain that a little further, but I'll explain that now. So in the center, we have the mandala of the Dhyani Buddhas, the meditation Buddhas, which are actually aspects of ourselves in the sense that they say the skandhas, the aggregates of consciousness. So this is the skandhas and the liberal arts to show the cross-reference of archetypes. So we're looking at the first skandha is form. The Buddha Akshobhya, which is basically our form, right? Our basic shape, the thing we inhabit, the chariot, if we want to call it that. And that's like our gateway to the quadrivium, which we'll get into in the next slide. I just want to mention that here. So, because this is our inner selves, and this is our gateway to the outer self. So the symbol is the Vajra, or the Dorje, which the mandala outside, the mandala inside. They have to reflect perfectly to progress. So basically, this Buddha here, right, sensation. His name will come to me in a second. My brain's a little tired. Ratna Sambhava, the Ratna family, the jewel family. So that's sensation, right? So that's like the grammar phase, that which comes in, right? We haven't evaluated yet. We're just taking everything in, and that's the wisdom of equality. The wisdom of Ratna Sambhava shines on everybody equally, like the sun shines on rich and poor, right? Because it comes from the interior. So you open up, everybody has access to this in the interior world. The richnesses of spirit are available to everybody. We get to Amitabha, whose symbol is the lotus seat, meditation, right? And that's logic. That's a logic phase. And it's cognition, or ability to process, distinguishing inner vision. Compassion, right? It's the realm of compassion, which comes about through that. And then finally, Amoga Siddhi, whose name means all accomplishing karma-free action. And that's volition, the skandha of volition. And in the liberal arts, we can see as rhetoric, ability to express things properly. And his symbol is the Visva Vajra, which is the completion of the mandala, which allows us into the center, which is Vairochana. But in essence, we're like the expression of Vairochana on earth. And we need to go through all these processes in order to, attain again the Buddha realm, or the ideal realm of Plato, or the higher spiritual realities, stepping through using Steiner's processes to get into, where Goethe led, where Goethe didn't really leave any teleology for us to follow. We don't need it. There's all sorts of them you can find when you go through it yourself. So let me get on my pointer mode. And so this is Akshobhya, the gateway to the mandala. It doesn't matter what name. In fact, I made up my own mandala because once you take away all the dogmatic and cultural influences, you're basically left with a color diagram. So anyway, here we are in the blue phase, we'll call it. So mirror-like wisdom, it's the pure and unbiased nature of the mind, symbolized by a mirror reflecting all things without attachment or bias. Seeing all phenomena as reflections in the mirror of the mind, one cognizes the unity of subjective and objective realities, exposing the illusory nature of distinctions between self and other. So it enables one to comprehend the interdependent and empty nature of all phenomena. So cultivating it, we transcend dualistic thinking, attaining realization of the irreducible oneness of consciousness and the irreducible wholeness of objective reality. So we take the Goethean approach in mirror-like wisdom. So it shares the comprehension of the interconnectedness of the world and individual experience within is integral to comprehending the experiential reality as a whole. The Goethean participatory approach deepens awareness of the spiritual essence of nature through direct participatory observation and imaginative exploration. So cultivates the state of awareness reflecting reality exactly as it is, without bias, interpretation or judgment, leading to a profound comprehension of the true nature of reality. Because the thing is in the mandala, it has to reflect personally. This is why I like the Goethean sciences are perfect for the study of the Vajrayana, because if the internal has to reflect the external, and you believe in like the Newtonian stuff and the rainbow chakras or the secondary qualities, how in the world can these false representations of the discursive realm manifest as the proper mandala inside? If you want to, when you die and your life flashes before your eyes, and you take your experience principle with you to either go to a higher realm, hopefully, or if you haven't quite made it and you are coming back, or you're crazy enough to be a bodhisattva and decide to come back. I think some of us were dumb enough to fall for that one somewhere along the line. But basically, if you know the pathway, that's it. And that's why I believe the Dinsha and the Goethe, they show that's the map. It's within it. This is what we're trying to find out. So, fundamentally, while both approaches bring about Vajrayana and the Goethean, and bring about cognition of the archetypal nature of reality and the oneness of it all. Goethean approach begins with objective observation of the processes of nature, bringing them within. The Vajrayana begins subjectively with the development of inner wisdom through meditation and spiritual practices. So this is my mandala, which I've made from that. And it's slightly, so there's blue, yellow, red. And usually it's green, but I made it violet because it matches. And in the center, what do we see? The manifestation of Vairochana on this plane, right? This is how everything operates in functional reality, through metamorphic processes, but that's fundamentally it. So anyway, we can say, divinity, it sleeps in the rocks. It dreams in the plants, it stirs in the animals, and it awakens in humanity. So this is our path, and thank you for listening.